Welcome back, everyone, to yet another episode of KYB. I'm Sinkas, joined here today by Christoph from the governance team. And KYB, I want to remind everyone, is a series where we interview builders and we get to learn more about themselves, but also about what it is that they're building, and ideally show it on screen and see how it works. Today we have Alex and Clement from Kleros. Guys, welcome.
Welcome. Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us.
Absolutely. Thank you for being here. I want to dive right into it. And firstly, like a sentence of what Kleros is. And then I want to learn your backgrounds and see who we're talking here.
You can really see Kleros as a subjective oracle. So in crypto, you may have a lot of smart contracts which are just referring other smart contract on-chain assets. For example, if you have Uniswap, you are trading some tokens which are on-chain with some other tokens which are on-chain. So then that's easy, right? But as soon as you want to deal with something which is referring to something off-chain or something a bit subjective, then the issue is that people can lie. So now you need to have a way, you need to have a truth machine to be able to sort out what is right, what is false, and then the contract can execute depending on that. So really the most simple example is an escrow contract. So you want to pay someone to do some work, you can put the token on the escrow contract, but then whether the work is done or not is something which is both off-chain and subjective. So to be able to know if the buyer should be reimbursed or if the seller of the services should be paid, then you need to have a mechanism to know about that. So that's what Kleros is. In this simple escrow contract, you would have both parties which will provide evidence of the work was done, the work was not done. And then we have Kleros jurors. They come, they look at evidence, and they're going to rule on whether this party should be paid or this party should be reimbursed. So here I'm giving a very simple example, which is like an escrow, very simple. But Kleros is really this kind of brick that you can plug into a bunch of applications. So for example, we have a curate, we have those TCRs, where we want to create some information to be true. For example, what is the name of this contract? Like, is it the contract of Uniswap, or is it a scam contract? And to do that, people can report information. They put a small deposit, and if someone believes that they are lying, they can challenge it. Also put themselves a deposit, and now you have a Kleros case where the jurors are going to determine, okay, this information is correct, and so it should be added, or this information is incorrect, and in this case, you will give the deposit of the liar to the one who will challenge this information. We have also all those prediction markets. So when you have a prediction market, you need to know some outside world event, like who won the election, what was the inflation in 2024. So you need outside information. And again, if people lie, then it can be challenged, and then you will have a Kleros case on did Trump win the election or did Trump lose the election? And then the smart contract related to the prediction market can resolve according to this. We also have proof of humanity, which is somehow a TCR itself, but a bit a special kind of TCR, where we want to prevent people from registering multiple times. So you go there, you put a deposit, you make a small video, you get someone to watch for you. And if you were already registered, or if you did your registration wrong, again, someone can challenge it, and then Kleros jurors, they can determine whether it was a valid submission or it's a wrong submission. And in this case, you lose the deposit, and the challenger gets the deposit, and you are not added into the registry. So that's really like a pretty wide range of problems which can be solved by Kleros. Like every time you need something which is off-chain or subjective. When you it's slightly subjective, like when it's purely subjective, like should we make this investment? That's not Kleros anymore because you don't have any true answer to that. But if you have a bit of subjectivity, but still something can be true or false, that's where you can use Kleros as a brick in your system. And how can we get jurors to actually vote honestly? So we are using a shelling coin principle, where the idea is that jurors will tend to be honest, they will tend to be coherent with other jurors. So if you are a juror who tend to vote coherently with the final result, you will tend to earn token and arbitration fees. While if you are a juror who tend to vote incoherently with the final result, you will lose your token across time. And since your chance of being a juror is proportional to the token that you stake, well, you will lose your stake, and so you will stop being drawn. So it's a system which is made to self-readjust by rewarding good juror and like slowly kicking out, but it's very slow, jurors which will not be very good jurors.
Damn, it's way more complicated and extensive than I originally remember. I had this impression of Kleros back from 2019 or 2020. It was one of the first apps that I actually engaged with, funnily enough. And I just remember like the on-chain court is how I remember it, but which kind of fits the description of what you just described, but also it's more than that. Right, before we continue with Kleros and learning more about it, I want to briefly learn a little bit more about you guys, about Alex and Clement, and who you are, maybe your background, and what you're currently doing at Kleros.
So background, I started in crypto in 2013 from politics. I was in the Pirate Party, and you had some of those Pirate Party guys talking about crypto. So I bought a few Bitcoin, and basically I ended up being a local Bitcoin seller as my student job. So that's really how I got into crypto. For some time, I had like so many hard work for my studies, so I stopped a bit. And after when I graduated, I went back into crypto, this time full time. So doing some audits and then starting Kleros with Federico. And so I'm one of the founders of Kleros, and I've been working on that basically like my whole career, except like study and internships. But it's not just Kleros. You don't like, because Kleros, it's not just you make Kleros, because it's a brick which is only useful if it's used by other applications. So maybe half of the work is making Kleros, and the other half of the work is developing the ecosystem. So building integration, sometimes building showcase application ourselves. So that's actually not like 7 years on Kleros itself. It's more like you make Kleros and then you make a lot of things around it while creating an ecosystem.
Mm-hmm. And what about you, Alex?
So yes, on my side, so I was interested in crypto a bit after Clement, so more in 2018, 2019. So basically at Kleros, I'm a DAO lead, so I'm dealing with everything related to governance of Kleros DAO, but also on other DAOs, basically, to look for different opportunities. So I have a kind of BD hat as well, look for opportunities about like potential integration. Clement mentioned about ecosystem, but that's really what we want to create, to have like all these different projects that are crypto natives, and some of them could be DAOs, and they could use Kleros, because that's where Kleros can bring value to DAOs by having like constitutional DAOs, for instance. That's something that can be done, and we have a product for this that is used in One-ish DAO, for instance, and Shutter DAO to solve general disputes, and that's something that also we are developing with the V2 beta on Arbitrum. And more recently, also, one thing that we really believe that we could bring a lot of value to DAOs is with innovation in terms of governance, especially something like futarchy. That is something that we are really pushing across different DAOs and different initiatives, because yes, as Clement mentioned, Kleros can be a subjective oracle for prediction markets, and prediction markets are the basic building blocks of futarchy mechanism. So yeah, this is my focus at Kleros.
So if we can dig a bit deeper into Kleros itself, because like something that really got me interested, I also have a notion of Kleros from like the same time that Sinkas mentioned, more or less. But you mentioned that this is a brick that is being used in other protocols, and you're working on building this ecosystem of protocols that are using Kleros. Also, something that I found interesting. You mentioned that this algorithm that you are using is like self-cleaning itself of the jurors, but it takes a long time and a lot of decisions to clean it up. So I'm wondering, what are the products, what are the protocols, what are the current use cases in which Kleros is being used, and what are the future, like your perfect use cases that you would like Kleros to be used in?
Yeah, so in the introduction, I already talked about a few, like about TCR, token included registry, when you want to create some information. So for example, if you want to know what is this particular smart contract, to display it on Etherscan or MetaMask, And so we have integration with both of those, like with Etherscan, they pick up some information from the current registry. With MetaMask, you have a specific plugin that you can use to get this information. So here, you want to create information. So that's one particular use case. We have already talked about proof of humanity, preventing people from registering multiple times. We have prediction markets, where you can make markets where you trade future outcome. Like you can trade some token which redeem for one DAI if Trump wins the election, or you can trade some token which redeems proportionally to inflation. And you can even do that at multiple level. You can trade some token which redeem proportionally to inflation if Trump wins the election. And that's starting to be interesting because now you can look at which candidate is going to lead to the highest inflation. So prediction markets. We've had some insurance use cases, which, well, the last one basically collapsed during the UST drama. But now we have another insurance project, which is going to re-release on top of Kleros. So that's also a very interesting use case. Like crypto insurance is so like underdeveloped currently. You have a few things, you have some mutual, but like the project, like the ecosystem, I think has a huge need of good insurance products. So insurance, sometimes it can be some cases which are not even crypto. It can just be people using Kleros as an arbitration mechanism. So in this case, it's not going to be enforced by smart contract, but they can just put in their contract that in case of an issue, they can refer to Kleros to solve dispute about their own contract. Do we have any other thing you want to add, Alex?
Yes, yeah. We can also mention like DAOs, basically. Some DAOs like 1inch and Shutter are using Kleros dedicated modules that allows to basically implement and enforce some specific rules. Like for instance, like you can have a rule that say, okay, with the treasury of the DAO, we don't want to do some risky DeFi things. It's a rule basically, and you are adding Kleros in the mix as a neutral third party that ensures that this rule is always respected, these constitutional rules. So it's a way also to separate the power within the DAO and to give a bit of power to Kleros as a neutral third party to guarantee some rules. So that's an example, a specific example for DAOs. As Clement mentioned, we are really pushing now.
Jimmy, how does it work? Like in that particular case, how does it work?
But basically, how it works is like the dedicated plugin exists with Gnosis Safe, basically, and it's linked to a snapshot space. Basically, you can have a Gnosis Safe that will basically reflect the action that were taken in the governance of the snapshot space.
Okay.
The Gnosis Safe contract, the only way to execute anything with the Gnosis Safe, you can remove all the signer and then the only contract that is from reality. And basically, it's the oracle that is using Kleros as a final arbitrator. So how does it work? It works in an optimistic way. So anybody can submit the transaction that should reflect the snapshot space, follow the constitution. If nobody challenges after 3 days, it goes through. It's an optimistic period. If somebody challenges it, basically, it can go in front of Kleros court. And then you have this role of Kleros jurors that are going to look at basically the transaction. They are going to look at the constitution and they are going to say, oh, is this transaction reflecting first what was voted in the governance? And is it constitutional? So this is how it works, basically, with an optimizing mechanism and the subjectivity, basically, of interpreting rules like written rules.
And in this case, how are the jurors selected? And like, how do we know who are the jurors and if they actually are competent enough to judge this particular case?
So Kleros, it's interesting to understand that Kleros, because we are targeting different use cases. Clement mentioned some are like token curated registry, very specific. Some you need some development dev skills basically to be able to read like Etherscan, but also to read Solidity. So because you need different skills, Kleros is built with a system of court. So you have different courts, basically, and you have a hierarchy of courts. You have a court, for instance, only for customer support use case that are coming like from fintechs. So we have with fintech, like when there is a deal with a fintech, like we have a big integration with Lemon, they reach 100 cases, like it's the biggest fintech in Latin America. So there is a dedicated court for this with jurors that are staking in this court. There is no check, like we don't do an interview. Person, it's like permissionless. It's like really a key part of Kleros, and anybody can come and stake its PNK token in this court. But if you stake in a specific court, you need to have the skills required for this court.
Okay.
The thing is, if you don't have the skills, basically, you are not going to know what to rule. If I don't know about Solidity and I'm staking a dev technical court, I will have a case and I will vote randomly and then I will get slashed. So as Clement mentioned at the beginning, there is this process of like incentives, like financial incentives that are also in a way curating the courts. So you want to have, if you are jurors, you want to stake in a court where you have the technical skills required by the court.
This absolutely makes sense. Maybe so, guys. Like I think that maybe this is the time. If you can present us something, if you can show us how it actually works, it would be probably easier, especially for our listeners.
Yeah, I think it will be more straightforward.
Yeah, so I can definitely share some things. Just to explain a bit the context. So Kleros protocol was developed in 2000. I think Clement and Federico started in 2018. And is live right now on Ethereum. This is where there is the most economic security. It's on Ethereum because you have all these jurors that are staking on Ethereum. We are also having a specific version on Gnosis chain. And now basically we are pushing and we are building our V2 beta on Arbitrum. And what I'm going to display, it's the V2 beta on Arbitrum. So you will be able to, because we improve the UX as well as part of it. So as of now, this V2 beta, it's still in its beta phase. So all the economic security is on Ethereum. The goal at some point is to do something very similar to what Ethereum did. It's to move the economic security from Ethereum to Arbitrum. And Arbitrum is going to become the home chain with all its security when the V2 will be fully complete. And this V2 will be able to rule and adjudicate cross-chain. So that's really the process and what the technical teams is working on. I'm going to show you this.
Awesome. Let's dig into that.
And while you're sharing your screen, is the beta like open to anyone, or is it private beta?
So as of now, maybe I will just first show some metrics about the V1. I think this is important. So the V1 here, can you see my screen? Perfect.
Yeah.
So here you have some metrics about the V1. The V1, it's on Ethereum, and this one is permissionless. So anybody can come basically buy PNK and stake in different courts. We have different courts for different specific things, like the humanity court is more for proof of humanity use case. There are different courts. As you can see, this is where there are the more economic security, because you can see basically all the PNK stakes. So we have 224 million of PNK, it's our own token that is staked in the core. We have 700 jurors in the V1, and we have almost 2,000 cases that were done in Kleros V1. So in this court, and then as you can see here, you have basically the different courts, as I mentioned. So you have like humanity court that are a court specific for proof of humanity use case. Technical, you need to have some technical skills, basically to if you want to deal with the case coming from this court. Oracle court, it's more about like prediction market and everything related to Oracle. And the general court is the top court that is in the hierarchy. It's above all other courts. It's the one that is securing the protocol with the max security and all the jurors. So this is an explanation, and this is the V1 protocol, some metrics about it. But now to make things a bit more concrete, I can show like the Kleros V2 beta and what it looks like from the user and with a case as an example. Let me just change my screen. Yeah. Okay. So as I mentioned before, so this is the Kleros V2 beta. It's on Arbitrum. That is built on Arbitrum. As you can see, here we have only 1 million of PNK stake. So it's way much less. It's because we are in a beta environment, because it's for basically we are educating real case. But the key point is of all these cases, they are low value cases. Because in the Kleros ecosystem, you can have different kind of case. You can have like very like high value cases. And this is the case of like prediction markets. And in the past with Omen, we had cases involving like millions of dollars. And as of now, Kleros is the oracle of SIR, a prediction market that is securing like 2 million of TVL. So there you can have very, very high value cases. But in the V2 beta, as of now, it's because it's in its beta phase, it's more for like low value cases. So as you can see, here, basically, you have the PNKs at stake. You have 46 active jurors, and we have already 53 cases. Basically, here you can get some PNK. So basically, PNK now is on Arbitrum. You can get some PNK. Here, if you go to see my profile, this is my profile. You can see that I'm staking my PNK. I'm staking 4,000 PNK in the general court. That is the last level court. I wasn't drawn in any cases because I'm in the general court, and it's not a specific court. It's a court that you reach only if it appears multiple times. But I think it's easier to understand if we take like a real case that arrived on Kleros. Here we have the different case, and as you can see, we have some cases that are in Spanish because big part also of we have some integration with Lemon, that is a fintech similar to Coinbase, based in Latin America. It's a big company, and there is a dedicated court for basically customer dispute, and we have an integration with Lemon, and they are going through this process. So you can see there are different periods in a case. So when you have a new case and you are a juror, you could be drawn to this specific case. You need to read basically the case. So in this case, it's in this court, and then you need to be aware of the policy document. So it's important to get that there are some specific rules, and these rules were crafted by a lawyer. We review them with it, and you need to have some specific principle to judge each case. So jurors need to be aware of these specific rules. That is the dispute document. So that's the first step. Stake in the right court, be aware of the rules of the court. Then the second step is to look at the evidence. Here we have the first evidence. It's like, so for the viewer that don't get Spanish, I will I will translate it briefly, but it's a user of this Lemon platform, basically, that requests a withdrawal of some ETH, and he requests it on Arbitrum instead of sorry, he did the request, I think, on Arbitrum, and he received the fund on Arbitrum as he request, but he did a mistake. He wanted to request the fund on Ethereum. So the user did the mistake. So he requests on the wrong network, but he wants to be reimbursed by the exchange because he explained that, you know, he did a valid mistake. He was honest. He was not trying to game the exchange. It's just that he didn't realize that he was making a mistake. So that's what the user is explaining in this evidence. And then you have the evidence of the other party. The other party is the exchange, Lemon, that is saying we have done exactly what we were supposed to do. So we explained to the user before withdrawing that he was on this specific network. And in our policy, it's written that we are not responsible if the user cannot withdraw the form from another network. So something very basic. So then you have the explanation of both parties. So the juror needs to look at this. And then there is a period where you have a voting. So you have 5 jurors. Those 5 jurors, they were drawn in this case. They read the evidence and then they vote. Should basically the plaintiff be refunded basically for this specific thing? And here you can clearly see that all the jurors agreed that the plaintiff shouldn't be reimbursed. Why? Because
what
he
does it
did
mean
the
that two votes at the first row?
in this
It's because it's
case,
drawn twice. So because your likelihood of being drawn is proportional to the amount of token that you stake. So there would be some time when there would be multiple tokens drawn of this which belong to the same person. And in this case, you will get 2 votes.
Okay.
because it's stake is probably higher in the court. So the idea is to have a proportionality. The chance of being drawn is proportional to your stake in the court. So that's why it's. And the interesting point is the fact that here you have basically each juror is giving a rationale for why he's voting this specific for why he did this choice. And this is very interesting because in the age, especially of AI, there are many things, like many times where you want to have like some proof that you have in front of you a human that is looking at your case, analyzing it, and giving its viewpoint. I mean, don't want to go into a philosophical debate, but a company like Lemon is integrating with Kleros because the user of Kleros, the user of Lemon, basically, that use Kleros, they feel heard. If you compare this with a customer support, where a user is fighting against a big company, in this case, you can see, oh, there are some like a neutral third party, other people that look at my case, that give me some explanation why they think I'm wrong. And the user feel heard and he stayed basically on the platform. That's why it's interesting for Lemon, is because instead of rage quitting, he's staying with Lemon. And that's the one of the strengths of Kleros. Kleros has many strengths. One of it is this one, is to have like real human inputs. And sorry. So this is the voting period. Everybody vote no. So there is no need to appeal. And basically, this is final. So the user won't be reimbursed in this time because he made the valid mistake.
Okay, and from that, I assume both like users need to go to Kleros, but also like the platform itself. Like in this case, Lemon would have to be on Kleros to go through this case, right?
Yeah, exactly. So we have basically two type of integration with Kleros, and the strength of Kleros, it's crypto native, and the strength of crypto is like smart contract, and smart contracts are deterministic. So when we are having a pure crypto use case, like with a prediction market or with a DeFi insurance, we can have like basically this integration done at the smart contract level. So when basically the decision is done by Kleros, the smart contract is releasing the fund of the escrow, for instance, at the smart contract level. As you mentioned, in the case of Lemon, for instance, this is a recognition of jurisdiction integration. Could be a kind of middle step where basically the case are manually loaded into Kleros. But at the end of the day, the final goal is basically to have and to onboard as many like company and people on chain to have everything on chain with smart contract.
Mm-hmm. And if let's say this case was ruled in favor of the user and theoretically they were to be reimbursed, would that happen automatically or?
So in the specific case of Lemon integration, if they rule in favor of the user, Lemon comply. So it's more like a contract that they have, that they will apply Kleros rules. So I do think in case of Kleros integration, like Lemon, if there is a reimbursement to be done and the plaintiff is asking for to be reimbursed, like Lemon will reimburse, but Lemon will push it on the button on this one. But as you mentioned, in the end game, the
Is to
goal
have
is
it automatically happen.
exactly with
Yeah,
a system of escrow and everything.
that's very interesting.
So this is one big part also of Kleros is we are also targeting like real world use cases. So with like fintech like Lemon, but also governments. Our team is also present in Argentina, as our CEO is Argentinian, and we have some integration with some government there, like the province of Mendoza, for instance. So it's also a big part of Kleros.
And you mentioned that this is a V2 beta on Arbitrum. What is what is new? What is cool in this V2? Like, why should we be excited by that?
So first, it's looking obviously way better than usually. Everything is loading super fast. Like it's just like a way better user experience. Then we have the possibility of having dispute kit, because in the current Kleros, you can only give one particular ruling. So for example, you ask, okay, who won the election? Trump, Biden, that's easy, right? But now if you wanted to ask something a bit more complex, for example, what is the amount of damage that party A should pay to party B? Now you cannot really do that because you have a risk. So maybe you will have 3 jurors, they will say 10,000, and then 4 jurors, they will say 11,000, and then 5 jurors, they will say 0. And it's gonna be 0 because that's gonna be like the first pass, the pass. So we can make dispute kit here, for example, allow jurors to give some numbers, and depending on also like in the end of the coherence with the final result, they will get win or lose a bit of token. We can handle those cases. And also with the dispute kit, is also in terms of economic security when we are going to go to the full V2. We are going to have the final course, which is going to be a forking mechanism. So this means that if you had the majority of the token which were held by malicious parties, and they were keep giving bad ruling, you could end up into a way where they have to select if they want to be on this fork, which is continuing what in the current Kleros, or if they move into a new Kleros, basically, which will only contain parties which agreed to a particular decision before. So that's mainly a protection. So it's something which should never happen, but because it can happen, it makes people behave well in the first place, because in this case, the attacker will end up with basically losing his PNK. He will still have his PNK, but he will have his PNK into like an old Kleros that no one will use anymore, because it will be the one which is corrupted. So economic security via the formalization of the staking mechanism, then do dispute kits also, yeah. And we can also do something interesting. You mentioned that you had a juror which had 2 votes. For example, we could combine Kleros and proof of humanity so that we could ensure that you cannot have more than 1 vote per person. Like you could require people to be registered in proof of humanity. And in this case, if they are drawn the second time, you could have a mechanism which is just redrawing someone else. Unless everyone is already drawn, in this case, obviously, you can't prevent that. But in the vast majority of cases, you could prevent juror from being drawn multiple times. Because it's slightly annoying from an economic perspective, because they do the work once, but then they get paid twice. So that's not what we want. So ideally, it's better if juror only have 1 vote. So it's also everything is made as a module. So we can just switch one module to another, depending on a particular dispute kit. While the V1 is, yeah, you have a few modules, like for example, the module to draw people randomly is a module. The token is also a separate contract, but then everything else is not really modular. So that's a bit annoying.
All right, and I want to ask, why Arbitrum? Like, what brought you to build on Arbitrum?
So several things, basically. On the technical side, I think Clement can mention some things, but my understanding, I'm not a technical person, but Arbitrum, when the decision was made, like was one of the most advanced L2 in terms of a fraud-proof mechanism. So that's one thing. Another thing, it's like we want to have to be on a layer 2 because like we want to be like cheap in terms of gas fees. The goal is like to reach to be able to do a lot of especially with this kind of a low value use case. Basically, you don't want to pay like $10 when gas fees are high. So that's why also Arbitrum was chosen. Kleros is an if aligned project, so we didn't go on any other like ecosystem. We are aligned in terms of our value, in terms of decentralization. The Kleros protocol is there is no multi-sig. It's like fully everything. The governance, there is a smart contract to upgrade the protocol, so it's really decentralized in this sense, unlike many protocols that have like hidden multi-sig. So we also, that's one big thing that we really appreciate with Arbitrum. It's like it was one of the first L2 that really commit with decentralization, with having a DAO that's having a real power to on the chain, and still from this day is leading the charge with the recent news we saw about like multiple decentralized nodes of Arbitrum, and yeah, of course, L2 bits in your dashboard for a long time. Arbitrum was and still is like among the top stage 1. And it was, I think, the first one to reach stage 1. So yeah, all this choice make it to choose basically Arbitrum.
Yeah. So from a technical perspective, the idea is really to get the security of Ethereum without having the transaction fees of Ethereum. And it's not currently the case. Like currently, I think there is no rollup where maybe there is some application-specific ones, but there is no rollup where you have the security of Ethereum and it's cheaper. Because now what we call rollup tend to be rollup project, but nothing which are currently rollup. Because they tend to have some multi-sig somewhere, or even if they don't have multi-sig, then you have the risk of very new tech. So you have this tech risk which is there. And the thing is that we are not really building for like tomorrow. We want to we want to look a little bit longer future, and in the longer future, it appears that we can see here. You can see on your own L2 bits that Arbitrum is the most advanced of the big rollup projects, and so we estimate it's likely going to be one of the first. It may be one of the first true rollup where you really get the full security of Ethereum without any specific compromise like multi-sigs.
Fair point. Fair points. Many of them, and really like this dashboard that you're sharing. Very good. We should bookmark the website and visit it. All right, and keeping like the conversation towards Arbitrum, I know like I've seen Alex in Arbitrum's DAO as well, and like being somewhat active. And I wanted to ask whether you have gotten any sort of support from Arbitrum for Kleros. If yes, what that looked like, and what has like the experience been as builders within the DAO? Like, you know, because the DAOs are supposed to help grow and cultivate the ecosystems, and being part of this ecosystem from the builder's perspective, I'm curious, like, what has your experience been with the DAO?
So the experience of Kleros with Arbitrum DAO, we applied to the LTIP program when we were building the V2 beta. Basically, I mean, the program was well done. Everything was very clear. But one of the feedback we can have as a builder toward the DAO, it's the level of complexity. Like a DAO, especially the big DAOs, are these big entities with different committees. You have different stakeholders. You have the foundation, you have the DAO, you have different subcommittees, you have different grants for different purpose. And basically, when you are not full time doing some following basically the governance of a big DAO, it can be pretty difficult to find your way through the DAO, basically. So that's one feedback we can have. It's true. It was true for us for this grant program. It was also true for Nebula. That is one of the projects we incubated, basically, as applied recently in the Questbook program. So I was there to help and to connect the dots. but it could be a bit challenging, this aspect. Also, that's also why basically we have chosen as the Kleros cooperative to have some Arbitrum, to stake them and to delegate this voting power to myself, so I can basically follow the governance, check where is the focus, check also the future of Arbitrum DAO, and see how we can navigate and how we can find some opportunities. So I think that's something that I would definitely advise to many projects. Of course, it's difficult because like builders are very like busy building things and they don't have time for governance. But at least having always looking at like what are the proposals, basically what is the strategic direction of the DAO, where is the DAO going, like with Arbitrum that we are seeing, like this post from the Arbitrum Foundation about the future vision, the fact that there is going to be Arbitrum aligned enterprise, like to have the mental model of basically where to ask and who to ask what. So I think that's one key thing. And we want to have this because, as I mentioned at the beginning, we really want first Arbitrum DAO to know about like what we are doing as Kleros and to see if there is opportunity for us. So that's why I put in the forum a specific post mentioning the V2 beta, what is it, where it's interesting, why it's bringing value to Arbitrum by bringing like real world use case to Arbitrum, and why it's also worth for Arbitrum and its DAO to support us because it's going to be the home chain basically of Kleros instead of like some DeFi project that are just copy and pasting their code in different chain. Kleros is going to have its home chain and its all economic security on Arbitrum. Like if a case is on Optimism, the case will be solved on Arbitrum and the data will be sent back to Optimism. So it's bringing a lot of value, economic value to Arbitrum. And like by monitoring the governance, you can see opportunities. Like a big opportunity that will happen. It's like the proposal about covering some part of audit fees for companies that are building and that are aligned, and that's not negligible. So we are monitoring, we are finding opportunities through the DAOs, and also we are trying to push some things basically. And DAOs have like capabilities, they have a huge treasury, they have a lot of very smart people in there. So what we want to push, especially for Arbitrum DAOs, is things related to futarchy. So that's why we are mentioning this in the forum at different places. We mentioned it under the SOS objectives of SeedGov that mentioned futarchy. At Kleros, we have the capabilities to do this for Arbitrum DAO. Clement can tell a bit more about why futarchy is so important and why it's a major governance innovation. But that's the thing we are doing with Arbitrum.
Yeah, so please do. Like, and I also, because we asked like how was it, but also how it should be in your opinion. Like, is there anything that you would like for the governance to do differently? Is there anything that you saw in other places that is working better? Like, what is your wish list towards like how DAOs should work with you?
Yeah, I guess what I mentioned at the very beginning, like being more simple, like simple for a builder to find its way, like maybe not having like multiple grant program, like just one grant program, one person, knowing like which is the right person to ask, having maybe some resources. I know that there was an Arbitrum hub, like trying to put all the resources in the same place, like to understand, okay, if I need a grant, I need to go there. If I need like specific things. So this, I think, is really important to have centralized information in the same place and to have something that is simple because it looks like very complex from the other side. So that's one thing. And the second thing that we really want is like also the DAO to take risks and to experiment, like and to support basically the builders that are committing and taking risks with this ecosystem. So in our case, it's about what we want to push. It's around futarchy because we believe it can bring a lot of value, but basically it's about like experimenting and taking risks.
Let me dig a bit deeper because you mentioned that you would like to have support. Like, what kind of support are you looking for from the DAO or the ecosystem in general?
Basically, what I mentioned is experimenting with futarchy. So this would be like a great support. Like the DAO has some resources, they want to run some incentive program. For instance, if we take the specific of Arbitrum DAO, I recently put a comment under the DRIP for the one that are following our Arbitrum governance. It's a new incentive program after the detox, the incentives detox. It's a new incentive program that is promoted by Entropy in order basically to do DeFi incentives. The idea is like you identify some key targets, like having the deepest liquidity in USDC ETH. That's a target, and you put incentivize to reach it, to reach this target. Basically, Kleros could create a futarchy program on the side that will help to know what could be the right amount of incentives to reach this goal, in order not to spend like too much incentive. Like you don't want to spend 5 million of incentive when you only need 2. One way the DAO could help, it would be like basically to say, okay, we think it's a good idea to have this on the side. I mean, we keep this decision power, but we run this experiment on the side, and we support it. We can support it with like liquidity. That could be one way to support it. We can support it with like co-marketing. That's another way to support it. There are plenty of ways to support such initiatives.
Okay, and for those that do not know what futarchy is, Clement, can you like give us a short pitch, like and sell us futarchy? Like what futarchy is for those that do not know?
Yeah, so the idea of futarchy is vote value but bet belief. So you set up a goal. So for example, for Arbitrum, it could be maximize its TVL, or it could be maximize its token price. And then you can have a proposal. A simple proposal could be, we're going to run this incentive program. And now what you can make some market, which is asking, what would be the TVL of Arbitrum if it's an incentive program? And what would be the TVL of Arbitrum if we don't run this incentive program? And so now you have some market-based estimate of what would be the amount of TVL which would be created by this particular program. And now like decision makers, they can see, okay, it's good value for money or it's bad value for money, and then they can make a decision to run it or not to run it. And the way it works is basically with conditional markets. So you basically have a first market, which is, will this program be implemented? And this market, you don't even need anyone to trade on it. You just use it. You just use the outcome of this first market that you put into the second market on what will be the TVL of Arbitrum. And by combining those two markets, you are able to ask questions with the if. You can say, what would be the value, the TVL, if we do this particular program? Traders, they can trade on both markets. At the end, the program is done or not done. The market which does not correspond to the reality, it doesn't matter. Like it doesn't have any impact on the finances of traders. But the market which ends up being connected with what actually happened, so the program happening or not happening, then at some point it's going to resolve. So people who are good at predicting the TVL are going to get rewarded. People who are not very good at predicting TVL, they may have some losses. And those market forces, they allow to make predictions into the future. And I think what is super important here is that in traditional like democracy or just everyone vote system, you can't spend a lot of time to evaluate all the proposals. And if you are wrong in your vote, you're wrong in the sense that you are voting for something which do not work, you have very little individual stake. So you have some stake in the DAO, but the impact on yourself is very like super diluted among all the stakeholders, right? But now if you use a futarchy system and you are good at predicting or bad at predicting, you already have like an impact on the trader of those markets. So you have way more incentive at doing your research. And also you have this kind of mechanism such that good traders end up earning some money from bad traders. So then they influence the next markets more. So you also have this kind of ecosystem building, which created an ecosystem of good traders which influence the market to make good predictions. And like you already saw that with Polymarket at predicting world events. Like you can look at Polymarket, it basically just works. Like Polymarket is pretty well calibrated. You can see that in the vast majority of cases, the outcome which happened were some outcome which were given a decent percentage. You will always have some outliers, like the Pope, for example, but the Pope is one outlier out of like 300 market or something like that, where the market was not giving a significant chance of what happened. So in most cases, we saw that the markets were very good at predicting world events, and now the goal is to use similar market mechanism at predicting the impact of decision. And if you can predict the impact of decision, well, you can make the decision which has the best impact.
And what kind of support do you need from Arbitrum or from DAO to do this? Like, can't you run this experiment on top of Drip yourself? Like, what kind of support would you like to see there?
So we can already like just make market like that, but then that may not be very, let's say, impact efficient compared to the cost and time that it will take. Because for this to be interesting, you need this information to be consumed, right? Like the goal of prediction markets or information market, let's call them information market, is obviously to create some information to be consumed. And if no one is watching those markets, well, we are just throwing like their resources and liquidity incentive without much impact, and so it may not be worth it. But now, like if you have the Arbitrum DAO, which say, hey, like we're just gonna reference those market before making decision. They don't even need to follow the market. They can just use it as one tool in their decision. Then they start to become way more interesting. Then you start to have way more eyes on those markets, way more traction on those markets, way more people trading on those markets, and now it becomes interesting for most parties, like on Arbitrum because they get information, on our side because we get traction for this particular market.
Okay, so you need basically for those outcomes that are coming from these prediction markets to be consumed by someone making decisions, right?
Yeah, like at the best, you just follow the market. But we are obviously aware that for very big decisions, prediction markets are still like a new thing. So you may start with advisory futarchy, where you just use futarchy as one element to make your decision. So that can be something like that. Or it could just be complete like futarchy on a smaller scale. Like you could say, okay, we take a smaller part of the grant program and we say, okay, this part of the grant program is attributed through futarchy. So that could be two ways where it could be helpful. Yeah. And again, like futarchy is really something which you can use for most decisions. Like I can tell you how to use futarchy to decide the TV show you want to watch tonight. You can also apply futarchy for that. So if you have any decision problem, like that's also something we can talk with you and see how we can formulate markets for those to get the highest amount of information.
Because if I'm understanding correctly, like you kind of want the like Arbitrum DAO in this case, like to give futarchy a chance in a way. You know, give it some space and try it out.
Yeah, that's the goal. We have some other project where we're gonna launch some futarchy experiments soon. But the goal is to really have like really push futarchy into all the big DAOs. And also the big DAO is probably where it's the most interesting because the value of the decision is so high that like we could put market subsidies which will basically be negligible compared to the value you get by making better decisions. So that's why also we try to mainly target very big project. Like we do something with one of the big projects which is not public yet, but that's why we tend to target very big projects. Like the state are also projects. I don't know if we can call them a project, but state are also actors which would greatly benefit from prediction market again because they make decisions which are so impactful. But then they are sometimes a bit slower technologically. But like use DAO like Arbitrum, they are both huge and tend to be technologically progressive. So I think they are the perfect start for prediction market experiments.
And one thing to add maybe on futarchy, it's some people have this vision of futarchy. It's all about like giving the power to these traders, like predicting, and like at the end of the day, you need to understand one key thing to understand is like the first part is very important, like the vote on value. We are not removing any power, like we are not removing the full power of governance and DAO. It's still a human and a governance decision to choose what do we want to optimize. Do we want to optimize TVL? Do we want to optimize token price? Do we want to optimize decentralization? Basically, anything that can be measured. And it's very important. And all this discussion, all this governance discussion about what our value, what do we want to do, what do we want to optimize, are still very, very relevant in a futarchy model. Basically, because they need to be agreed above all. The market cannot tell you what to do, like what are your value, what to optimize. They can only tell you, the market can only tell you what is the best way to optimize these specific metrics. And I think that's a key things to keep in mind when it comes to futarchy.
And also keep in mind, you don't bet on a decision, because that's like, I see so many people thinking that futarchy is betting on a decision. No. You are trading metrics based on decision impact. So that's completely different than the decision itself. Like as a trader, you are generally completely neutral to the decision, because you can trade on both markets. What you really trade is impact.
Awesome. We're already at the top of the hour, so we need to be like slowly wrapping up. But I hope that let's see where this discussion takes us. Maybe maybe we can meet in a half a year from now or like a year from now and see if it was successful. If you could really push it through the Arbitrum DAO or some other DAOs. And I would love to see the outcomes of this experiment and discuss them. So before we wrap things up, is there any like final thoughts? Final,
I have a
yeah.
final question, which I think will be interesting, given especially if we are to meet again in a year from now, let's say, and see how things went. I'm wondering, like, what are your plans? Like, does the future of Kleros look like?
So it's a way. So one side you have the Kleros V2, and here the beta is working well. There will be all the audits to be done, a few more modules to develop. So you have one side which is working on the V2, and then the other side is really working on this ecosystem development. So here, like I gave the example of futarchy, but we are also working with some insurance projects. We are working with some escrow integration. We are really working. Anyone who wants to use Kleros, we really go there and let them. Like we talk about incentive that can be given by the DAO. At the cooperative, we're also doing that. We've been giving incentives to project building on top of Kleros. So that's also a huge part of what we do, really helping builder. And we can see it, like on the V2, you will have Arbitrum here, and then you have Kleros, and then you have some project which relies on the Kleros, and you are building this kind of tower of with which each individual small bricks. And sometimes it's not just one brick on top of other. Like you combine bricks with each other. So yeah, like really helping anyone. So making the brick better, and also helping anyone building on top of this Kleros brick.
All right, let's hope to be able to get another episode in the future together and discuss those things and see how far along you've come. Great, we are at the top of the hour. I'm not sure if there's any final remarks that any of you would like to make.
Maybe, yeah. If anybody is interested in Kleros, feel free to basically join our community. Like we have a Telegram channel where we have a big ecosystem with people specialized in different topics. As you have maybe seen, like Kleros is pretty broad. So you have some people that are more specialized on the legal side, some people that are more interested in like governance innovation, futarchy, prediction market. Some people that are more interested in like real world use case, like changing things like by using blockchain technology and bringing like traditional government and companies on chain. So feel free to reach. We have a wide community there, and also we are present in the different conference. So we will be in DAppCon Berlin. We will also be in FCC in Cannes. And we will be in Dev Connect also, and part of the team is Argentinian, so definitely we'll have a strong presence there. So yeah, feel free to reach out.
Awesome. Well, that brings us to the end, I think. So, Clement, Alex, thank you so much for being here. Of course, I will have links to Kleros in the description of the video on YouTube. So anyone wants to check Kleros out, there's the place to do that. Yeah, thank you so much. I'm not sure if Christoph has any final thoughts.
No, thank you very much. And let's see where the future takes us.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.